A lot of you have asked me about Jonathan Cho. He is the reporter who was fired from Como TV in Seattle because of his coverage of a Proud Boys rally. Apparently, there were people on Twitter who called it Proud Boys propaganda, and Como ended up cutting him loose. But, Jonathan Cho had been doing some incredibly important work covering the city's homeless crisis, for instance. He is like a fearless reporter, and there are very few of those these days. And he uncovered something. He's been since he left Como, he's been out doing things on his own, continuing some of his reporting. And he uncovered something that is perfectly suited for my favorite segment, Unbelievable. Thank you to the founding sponsor of Undivided, 1530 Mortgage. Visit them at 1530mortgage.com. There is this shoplifting crisis happening in some American cities. We're certainly seeing it in Seattle, where you have some businesses who've closed up shop or moved out of downtown Seattle because they just cannot be profitable anymore. There's not enough police officers on patrol. They can't afford to hire private security. And so we have seen just, this have a devastating impact. And of course, the shoplifting crisis, I would argue, is fueled by not only the homelessness crisis, but more specifically, the drug addiction crisis. And we've been down on 3rd Avenue. It looks a little better now than it did in this video. This was several weeks ago, where you have these open air bazaars where people are selling stolen merchandise, and a lot of them selling it to fuel a drug habit. Well, Jonathan Cho got this tip that things had gotten so bad that some grocery stores are having to lock up their pints of ice cream. I kid you not. Take a look at this video.
Okay, so I heard about the rumors of locks now on the ice cream fridges here at QFC in Capitol Hill. And it's true.
Like, I know Ben & Jerry's is expensive, but to put a lock on all the doors of ice cream, this is at a QFC location, which is a grocery store in Washington State. So I decided to have Jonathan Cho on, not only to talk about that story, but some other work he's been doing, and just to give people who are curious an update on what he plans to do from here. Jonathan Cho, welcome to Undivided. First time having you on. We've been chatting a lot since you left Como, and I have a lot of people who are curious about, well, they're mad that you were fired. And they want to know what you're doing next. So what are you going to do next?
Well, Brandi, thank you again for your ongoing support, and especially to your viewers and listeners. But for now, it's only been, a couple weeks tops since I've been off air from Como. Again, no ill will at all towards my former station, especially my former colleagues. But I'm going to use this time to really recalibrate, reassess what direction I need to go. But I will say this, it's going to be something in Seattle, and it's going to be in the media. So stay tuned is all I'll say for now. But I'm going to take maybe a few more weeks off, but I'm still doing things on occasion here in the city, trying to spotlight and highlight a lot of the work, sort of the stories I left on the cutting room floor. So you're going to see some of that on Twitter and my social media.
Well, if you only look at your Twitter, it's as if you never left Como, because I would argue you're actually doing more than you were doing. And I'm like, he's over here at Camp and Sweep. He's talking to the mayor. And I'm like, how do you find the energy? But I wanted to talk to you today about something that, to me, was just a striking testament to where the city's at. There is a QFC, and there's some people nationally who won't know what that is. It's a grocery store chain here, up in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. And you went there and you found something incredibly fascinating. They're locking up the ice cream.
Yeah, Brandi, sign of the times. QFC, as you mentioned, is a local grocery store chain here in the Seattle area, based in Bellevue, but it's actually owned by Kroger, the national supermarket conglomerate. Anyway, QFC, well-known brand here in the Seattle area. And there are two locations in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, one at the corner of Pike and Broadway, and another less than a half mile down the street on Broadway as well. And the neighbors are constantly, hitting me up over text and email saying, you got to check out this, you got to check out that. And, one astute neighbor kept bugging me and saying, you got to go look and check out what's happening at the QFC. And I'm like, what's going on? And this person said, there are literally locks on the ice cream fridges. And I'm like, what? Locks on the ice cream fridges? Now, we've been into drugstores and we've been into supermarkets where they have a lot of the high-end items behind the glass or behind the counter, right? I mean,
yeah, razors and things, teeth whiteners, those things. Yeah,
exactly. So who cares? But I follow up on every single tip. And this neighbor was adamant. So I finally, this week, decided to go to the QFC locations in Capitol Hill. And lo and behold, there are literally locks on some of the ice cream fridges, and you need an associate's help to access the ice cream. And of course, I asked, why are you guys doing this? And several workers said because of the spike and the rampant theft that these locations have been facing for the past few years. It's just out of control. So it's essentially another Seattle business taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah, and we're looking at the video that you took of these they have a lot of ice cream at this store, which I was like, wow, that's very impressive. But it's all locked up. And did you ring the little bell for the associate to ask her what was going on?
Yeah, first of all, I was absolutely stunned. And of course, I had to hit the button. And the associate, very kind associates at both locations, came and said, yeah, we've had to do this because we've lost thousands of dollars. At one of the locations, an associate came up to me and said he's lost $30,000 since the summer.
And that's
just ice cream. This is just ice cream, Brandi. Yes, this is just ice cream. And I want to make that very clear. It was just ice cream. And I said, why are these criminals targeting the ice cream? And all the associates have said, it's really the tweakers. It's the drug addicts. They're not going to resell this ice cream because ice cream melts, right? There's, a limited shelf life for ice cream. But it's the sugar and the cold, apparently. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert when it comes to drug addiction, but apparently it helps with their cravings. Wow. And that just blew my mind.
It's so fascinating because it's this little, and this is why I love you. It's this little tip that most reporters, I think, would have disregarded, like, oh, that's not a big enough story for me. I'm not going to go see if they have ice cream locked up at QFC, but you were able to go there and just get so much more information about the extent of the problem, because you also spoke to some folks running security at one of these QFCs, and they actually told you that they're able to step it up a little bit, to step up security to deal with shoplifters. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, just in the past 2 or 3 weeks, according to the security guards who I actually interviewed, initially a lot of these big box retailers and corporate chains, they have a liability policy, right? They build in theft into their write-offs, essentially, their way of doing business. So initially, a lot of these stores like QFC, they had only one type of security guard, right? You basically are there to say, stop, don't take the items. But the policy was, up to this point, you can't go after them. You can't try to get back, so a bag of grapes that a thief runs out of the store with. So now they've hired another type of security guard that is now allowed to go after these criminals and try to get back these stolen items.
Yeah, and that does worry me.
Fascinating.
That definitely worries me because, that's when you have that conflict and you're like, okay, is a $4.99 pint of ice cream worth, potentially some sort of conflict that could escalate? So I'll be curious to see what, might result from that and how that goes and whether other stores will do that as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I reached out to QFC corporate to find out, right, exactly what ultimately is their policy. Why are they taking these steps? And so far, I've tried multiple times. No one from corporate has gotten back to me to sort of clarify what the procedure will be moving forward. But overall, there is just this overall sentiment at these locations of safety now. People, the shoppers, especially who I talk to, they're like, oh, we feel much safer just to have this presence and knowing, even though it's kind of annoying to have these locks and maybe even more security guards and so on and so forth, they feel it's just safer to shop at these locations, and maybe other retailers follow this model.
Yeah, and you don't want a store like that to close because up on Capitol Hill and in many places of the city, you don't want to create food deserts where people who live in the city don't have a place to shop. So it's important. Can I ask you about one more thing? Because you were very busy this week. So yeah. I watched on your Twitter, and if people don't follow you, it's @Cho Show, CHOE Show. I'll put it up on the screen here. You posted a video that is one of the most awkward exchanges with a politician I've ever seen, with Seattle City Councilwoman Lisa Herbold, who, for people who don't know, she's the chair of the Public Safety Committee. She was kind of at the forefront of defunding. And you apparently, and I'll let you kind of get into this, you hadn't ever at Como been able to talk to her. So you kind of ambushed her at this unrelated press event. And she would have rather been anywhere else than where she was at that moment. I'm going to play just a clip of this.
Are you for homeless encampment sweeps? Come on, let me just ask you one more time. Are you for homeless encampment sweeps?
That is all I got for you, Jonathan.
Well, what are you doing to retain Seattle police officers and bring them in? I just wanted to know, because you wanted to defund police. I saw the budget.
Yeah. And in the budget, we fully funded the hiring plan.
Right.
Right? So all the officers that the police department is intending to hire, they are funded to hire.
Right, but what are you doing to retain them? What are you doing to retain them and bring
cuts.
more officers to Seattle? Because there's a morale issue.
I'm working
Right.
on legislation that would permit the Seattle Police Department, as well as other departments like the 911 center, where we are right now,
Yeah.
CSCC, to and other departments in the city.
What do you say to your...
Am I going to answer the
Sure, I thought you were
question?
done. I'm sorry.
Nope.
I thought you were done.
Nope. We're working on funding the costs associated with national hires. So, for instance, when the chief or Director Lombard are trying to do national hires and recruit people from other locations, there are costs associated with people moving across the country that we want to look at compensating people for, and that's what we're working on.
What do you want to say to your constituents who say they don't trust the council anymore, especially on the issue of crime? Okay, well,
Thank you.
got it. Could I just ask you one more question? There's some locks being put on ice cream fridges in Seattle.
Today's event is about the protection.
Right, no, that's why. But she's leaving, so I just wanted to get her thoughts.
Does she not like you, Jonathan?
Well, first of all, up to that point, I'd never, ever met her in person in my entire life. As I said, I've been trying to reach her for the past couple of years just to get comment and on-camera interview really about all kinds of subjects related to her area, and that's public safety. And she's just declined everything, and she operates with statements, right? That's a playbook a lot of politicians use to try to avoid, being held accountable by the media, just throwing statements at us and just kind of walking away. And I'm hoping a lot of younger journalists take note of that and continue to try to hold these public officials accountable here in Seattle, because the officials and their handlers, their PIOs, they all know that playbook usually works in this city. But anyway, look, Lisa Herbold, she's a public official and she's fair game when she's in the public. That was a SFD fire station, near City Hall. We all know where that location is. And there was a separate press event, but she was there sort of supporting the topic. And I was like, wow, she's there. No one's talking to her. There was like a media scrum for Bruce Harrell. And I was like, wait, Lisa's alone. This is my opportunity to finally say hello and walk up to her and ask all of these pressing questions. And I have dozens, but as you can see in my clip, I only had the short, finite amount of time to rattle off questions about public safety, about homeless encampment sweeps, about what it's going to take to really retain police officers. Because she's absolutely right in that the budget to fund police, it's all there. But that's not the issue, right? That's the spin. The real issue right now among SPD is bringing in new officers, but also retaining qualified, experienced officers who are now running for the hills, who don't want to work in this type of environment for this council in Seattle.
Yeah, one of the questions you asked her, I talked about it on the podcast, this story on Monday, about her fellow councilman Andrew Lewis finally having an epiphany that, according to data, there is a huge amount of crime associated with the homeless crisis in the city, which for any of us who have walked around in the city and covered these issues, it's glaringly obvious. And so on the podcast Monday, I was like, how can he just be coming to this realization? But you asked her whether she agreed with his sentiment, and I would argue that she did not give you an answer.
What are your thoughts on Councilmember Andrew Lewis acknowledging there's a clear link between some homeless encampments and crime?
I think it's not only something that he's recognized, it's something that Chief Diaz can recognize.
How about you? Do you recognize that, or?
You can look at the locations where there have been shootings, and as we know, people who are living homeless are much more likely to be victims of shootings.
No doubt that in many cases, the homeless who are living here, they're the victims of crime. They're the victims of shootings. But I was talking to her about this data that was, published in the Seattle Times article quoting Andrew Lewis. And it's that, more than 18% of gun incidents in Seattle are related to a homeless encampment in some form or another, along with other types of crime. That's an inconvenient truth that seems to be glazed over by so many public officials up to this point. Of course, Andrew Lewis, who represents downtown Seattle, finally coming to this realization, at least publicly now admitting this. So I wanted to ask her about that. She's the chair of the Public Safety Committee. How does this potentially change her strategy and look now in terms of how she approaches crime? So that's what I wanted to ask her, and you got the answer. Wasn't quite an answer.
Yeah, she wants to acknowledge that, there's, she kind of defaults to this, oh, well, homeless people are the victims of crime, which is part of it. But we clearly know that that's not the entirety of the issue. And so it's almost like she doesn't want to offend anyone, but you cannot solve a problem if you don't acknowledge what the problem is. And as you point out, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, these are things that she should have a grasp on. So that concerns me. Jonathan Cho, in this video, I just have to ask, some people have taken issue with your tactics, because you're definitely in people's faces and you'll go in, you'll ask the questions. Is there any reason or anything we didn't see on the video that would explain why she was being so awkward? Or do you think it was just she really didn't want to, did she feel cornered?
Like I said, this was a public place. In fairness to Lisa Herbold, she stayed with it. But
did.
that entire interview, though, it started with her trying to bolt. She clearly said she wanted to get her coffee. That was her priority. But, my job, again, as a journalist in a public space like that, again, she's fair game. I wanted to ask her these simple questions. I was trying to be as respectful as possible. But again, sorry, but I was trying to rattle up all of these questions, and I knew a short amount of time. And at the end, one of my commenters on Twitter said it best. The Seattle Fire Department saves the day again. As you saw.
Yeah, they had to come and rescue her. The chief of the fire department actually came over, I think, to give her a little bit of an out. And I will note, it's not as if you didn't try through official means to get interviews with her. And there do come points in journalism where it's like, okay, like you said, it's a public official. I'm trying to get answers. And if they're not going to be willing to speak with me, I might have to go up to them at a press conference when they're not expecting it. And I've done that. I think a lot of journalists have done that in the past. So
and it wasn't her house. I want to be very clear. Unlike some of the activists in this city, I didn't go to her house or anything like that. And it was a public event. So yes, again, I have all the emails. I've tried multiple times to go to her PIO and so on and so forth, and her handlers, and no response, or they just throw a statement my way.
Well, Jonathan Cho, I'm so glad you're still out there keeping things up, even though you're still getting harassed at homeless camps. I was happy to see the police stand up for you at one of them, though. I saw that video on Twitter. So keep up the work. And I know everyone is very eager to hear what you're going to be doing next.
Thank you again, Brandi, for the opportunity to share my perspective.
So that is my conversation with Jonathan Cho, the former TV news reporter in Seattle, who has still been out since his firing, trying to dig for answers and get answers on behalf of all of you. And so pleasure to have him on. I don't think that's going to be the last time that we have him on Undivided. I'm sure he'll be back by popular demand. Thank you to the founding sponsor of Undivided, 1530 Mortgage. Visit them at 1530mortgage.com.